5 minutes. At this time, please move to your seats and help us start on schedule. As a reminder, keep your electronic devices turned on, but set them to silent. This way you can text or email your questions for our guest speakers through the address on the screen, askmetna@gmail.com. FC would like to recognize CompTIA, GIAC, and CertNexus, as well as FC preferred partners American Public University, Sands Institute, and Western Governors University for helping us bring necessary training sessions and certification opportunities to our members and attendees.
Since its inception in 1999, the Ultimate Knowledge Institute has emerged as a premier provider of information technology and cybersecurity training for the Department of Defense and leading commercial enterprises. Over the past 25 years, UKI has built a robust reputation, leading to the research and development of a scalable enterprise educational delivery framework and a comprehensive learning management ecosystem called Open-360. Built on ADL's Total Learning Architecture, Open-360 is competency-centric and leverages XAPI and CMI5 to support both current and future innovations. Open-360 offers organizational readiness and talent mobility, integrating seamlessly with UKI Open Learning Services to provide competency-based training that meets operational needs. Experience-rich, challenging instruction designed for real-world impact, delivered by top cybersecurity providers. Our content development team features DoD and industry experts who craft bespoke operational content to upskill and evaluate your team in real time. We deliver hands-on labs purpose-built to assess and award mission-relevant competencies, providing readiness data to decision-makers. Our state-of-the-art provisioning and deployment engine, Open Terrain, seamlessly integrates with Open-360 and our cutting-edge content studio. Utilizing our trademarked Insights framework, Open Terrain deploys network scenarios across both AWS Cloud and on-premises environments. With a quarter century of excellence, the Ultimate Knowledge Institute is your trusted partner for comprehensive, impactful cybersecurity training. Empower your team with the Ultimate Knowledge Institute, where innovation meets operational excellence.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Day 2 of TechNet Augusta 2024. Before we begin the main program, please direct your attention to the stage for a special presentation. We'll now ask General Gary Brito, Captain Nicholas Hendry, Sergeant First Class Jonathan Colston, and Sergeant First Class Nathan Luker to come to the stage.
So are you guys getting the awards or someone else coming up? Okay.
The Brigadier General David H. Stem Award is presented to the 35th Military Police Detachment and the 222nd Military Working Dog Detachment, Fort Eisenhower, Georgia, as the U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command's Outstanding Military Police Unit for fiscal year 2023. This year's recipients are Captain Nicholas D. Hendry, 35th MP Detachment, Sergeant First Class Jonathan T. Colston, 35th MP Detachment, NCOIC, Sergeant First Class Nathan T. Luker, Kennel Master, 222nd Military Working Dog Detachment. Please join me in a round of applause for these outstanding soldiers.
Once again, outstanding, gentlemen. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. I'll tell you what, I'm going to wedge in the middle there. How's that? I'll let you hold it, not me. Okay. Got it?
Yes, sir.
Let's give these soldiers a round of applause. Well done. Cool. All yours.
Please welcome to the stage Lieutenant General Susan Lawrence, U.S. Army retired, President and CEO, FCA International.
Hello, team. I saw many of you out last night. I hope you enjoyed all the networking opportunities. I want to thank you for your endurance yesterday morning as we had a little challenge. We're going to get more information to you here shortly about what happened. But what a fantastic first day. I just appreciate our partnership here. And I always say our industry partners have really shown up in force this year, so thank you very much. I love seeing how many uniforms out there that we have. It seems like it's more this year, and we do know our registration is larger than last year, so another record-breaking day. So with that, again, you can find a recap of everything that happened yesterday on the Signal event coverage page. And it is also accessible through the conference website. Hopefully you have that, our app downloaded so that you can see that, and you can bookmark that site as we go forward. The speakers yesterday was so exciting, having grown up in this world and hearing John Morrison's 3-minute attack yesterday, and hearing from our CIO, our CIO and all the things that is happening there and the shaking and moving and breaking down that bureaucracy and breaking glass. It's just so exciting. And then we had Mr. Young Bang and his assault team up here talking about how we're going to acquire those things we need faster as we go forward. So again, it was a fantastic day. So please welcome Colonel Retired Chad Bates, PhD, Senior Principal Research Scientist at Ultimate Knowledge Institute, to the stage to introduce this morning's keynote speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of AFCEA International and Ultimate Knowledge Institute, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce this morning's keynote speaker, General Gary Brito, Commanding General of the U.S. Army's Training and Doctrine Command, or we like to call TRADOC. TRADOC is a great institution that brings in the talented future soldiers and leaders and trains them for the many aspects of the Army mission. This is not only done at the beginning, it continues throughout their military career as they continue to be educated and provided skills throughout their military career. For the operational Army, it assists them in preparing for the many missions through studying the future and preparing difficult and challenging scenarios to help them train upon so they are ready for their many missions. Ultimate Knowledge Institute UKI is on a parallel trajectory, focusing on preparing the technical workforce through human-centered design engineering practices, developing a knowledge age technical talent management platform that will deliver the training and experiences that the workforce wants and the mission requires. Personally, I look forward to this discussion because of the great mixture of time General Brito has spent in the institutional Army and TRADOC and the operational Army. He is a warfighter that knows firsthand what it takes to win in multi-domain operation. He understands that the network and our data is our foundational weapon system. And most importantly, he knows that it is our soldiers and all components, active guard and reserve, that whatever we field will operate and maintain that equipment in combat conditions. All are foundational aspects of the Army profession. Ladies and gentlemen, General Brito.
All right, we got a countdown clock. We started a great day recognizing U.S. Army soldiers. It cannot get any better than that. One thing, the lingering smell is not my aftershave, so we're going to have a great day today. Hey, team. That's my one dad joke. I got two more coming. Get ready. Hey, team, it is really good to spend a second year in this conference today. And I'm really glad to see a mixture of our industry partners, of which the Army will continue to succeed with. I'm also very happy to see soldiers and leaders of all ranks and a couple other services here as well. I will tell you, team, when I was told about this a couple of weeks back, we prepared a couple of great slides. I will admit it's a little intimidating because you're talking to someone that has a hard time just getting his regular cell phone to work. But that's not a dad joke, that's true, actually. But what I'd like to do, team, is talk to you just as Gary Brito, the TRADOC commander and a senior leader in the Army. Actually, I prefer to say seasoned leader in the Army. Might be kind of old, but it's okay. And I want to give somewhat of a couple perspectives. One, helping our United States Army, which is part of the joint force, transform and show some of the necessity of that. And I want to take it down a few elevation levels from there, and obviously cannot get away from talking to you as the TRADOC commander, or part of the Army team, and the institutional training that we need to give the Army. And then I do want to address those young leaders represented in the room today, and maybe some of those senior leaders that represent young leaders also, and the development that we need to give them of all ranks to allow us to defeat any of these adversaries that we may have in the future and support our secretary and our chief as our Army transforms. I actually have some great cards here, but I'm just going to put them aside and talk to you here. Now, I was taught, just like many of you in uniform a long time ago, brand new second lieutenant, everything starts with that paragraph 1, understand the adversary. And our adversary is a bit different now, and you know that more than I do. And I say this for a couple of reasons. One, to pull in our younger leaders and our more seasoned leaders in the room to show the importance of getting ahead of that adversary. And I'm not talking about just overmatch here. I'm talking about overwhelming overmatch that we must have. And that pulls in the support of the industry partners we have in this room today. And that we need to some clear-eyed, laid out some very good requirements, understand what this adversary can do for us, against us, the overmatch that he is going to try and have, and I'll explain some of that a little bit in operational terms, my grunt operational terms, and more importantly, so that we achieve the overwhelming overmatch that we must have in this domain. Whether you want to call it signal, physical, information, cyber, but we must have in this multi-domain environment to ensure we can fight in a large-scale operation environment and contribute to the operational force. So I do want to talk just a few things, and I'm going to put it in my grunt operational lens as we go through this. Now, Bluff, part of the outcome, possibly, of this conference, this domain is at the edge of the battlefield right now. It is critical to ensure that we have the operational overreach, the overmatch, I'm sorry, that we must have. So I know the discussions with industry, the requirements that we discussed throughout this week are going to lend very well to the United States Army and its contributions to the Joint Force. But we have to apply that in the lens of looking at our adversaries. And just a couple of things I do want to talk about going around the clock. Now, it's very clear you watch the same news channels I do, read the same articles that I do. We have some very aggressive adversaries out there across all domains. We can look at some of the operations in Eastern Europe right now. So whether it's kinetic stuff on how great that rifle shoots, or the aspects of the command post and the network, all that is critical in understanding what our allies do and our partners do. And some are represented in this room today, both in our research and our training, the bluff. We need to understand the adversaries that we're going to face globally, and sometimes more than one, which underscores how we're going to train our Army, some of the adaptation that we must go through, and the rapid transformation that we must go through as well. And I don't define rapid as running that 6-minute mile. It's at the proper tempo to build really enforce the integration of the Doctrine PF, which is critical as we continue to modernize and transform our Army. That's key. So we're well aware of the threats to our allies and well aware of the threats to our partners, and in turn, the same for us. So we'll work everything in tandem. We clearly know that we have a rising peer threat, whether you want to look at Indo-PACOM, stuff going on in Europe, or other, this global threat, it's massive. And I know that our Army will continue to win and transform against it, which underscores the criticality of, one, understanding this operational environment, which TRADOC does help do for the Army, and looking at the now fight, all the way up through the next 10 to 15 years fight. And then I would like to highlight, team, the great partnership that all the ACOMs have at defeating this and giving the overmatch that we need. We work very, very closely with Futures Command, understanding this near-term operational environment I just mentioned now to 10 to 15 years, integrating with them as they look at the future operational environment. Of course, our Forces Command, doing all the warfighting aspect. I won't repeat the Chief's focus areas. Then obviously closely with the Army Material Command and what they need to do to make this work. But we would not be smart to not realize the capability growth potentially, well, there's no potential, the capability growth we have in our rising peer threat. And you can connect that peer threat to the challenging priority theaters that we have. And I won't be going through anything sensitive nor regurgitating of the priorities of the Chief and Secretary, but we know where we need to fight across the globe. It all starts with training at the basic level all the way up, and you'll see that on the follow-on slide. Now, I did mention last year, team, that our adversaries, while our Army was heavily engaged in GWAT, in the counterinsurgency fight over the last 10 to 15 years, they were studying us. And we were doing exactly what we needed to do, given the operational threat for that last 10 to 15 years. But I would argue, and I think you know as well, over the last 2 to 3, that threat is changing and demanding that our Army transitions and be ready to fight in large-scale combat operations in a multi-domain environment. And that's probably the last time I'll get geeky on you there. But I'll also say there's some threats and challenges that come in operating in this type of environment that we simply haven't had to face in a long time, and quite frankly, I hope that we won't. But we must be ready. And to narrow it down to this audience here, we must be ready to be dominant in the domain represented in this room today. We must be ready to deploy very quickly. We must be ready for mass casualties if we have to do that. We must be ready to have a strong, rapidly adaptable network if we have to do that. And I think we're going to have to do all of it. And that be underscored in the follow-on slide as I talk to you. And I know this audience here will help us get there. I don't say that to be Debbie Downer whatsoever. I feel extremely confident that we'll have the Army we need when called upon, and that is why we're transforming now. Now, a bit on the domains team. I would ask you, especially the young leaders in here today, as you own this in the years ahead, and of course working with our industry partners as well, please do master your respective domain, but understand the integration and the connection of all of them. And that's critical. It's critical in the way we train, it's critical in the way that we fight, it's critical in the way that we build expertise in our respective lane. Now, as the Army's institutional command, ACOM, and training soldiers everywhere from the basic blocking and tackling up through the pre-command course, I say in this case, TRADOC owns a big part of that. In adapting our warfighter exercises, adapting the training scenarios at our combat training centers to include those overseas, working with Forces Command to help them understand the operational environment to support the home station training event, linking in ASCCs, corps, divisions through the simulated warfighting exercises to a brigade that's training in the dirt at one of the combat training centers. That's new, that's innovative, that's part of the transformation that our Army needs supporting the chief as we continue to transform in contact. And you can tie that to some of the material capabilities, I know which will be discussed in this conference today, and integrate the power, unleash the power of the Dahlem PF and what it does for our Army. And that is very, very key. And just a couple more things, team. Threats to the homeland, it's there. It's a big globe, but a small globe for a lot of reasons. Hacking, misinformation, disinformation, all of that impacts the readiness of the Army and the Joint Force as a whole, and I know that we're going to be ready for it. And team, domestic change, last year I talked a lot about some of the challenges with recruiting. All the services are having those challenges. All the services are having better success this year. And I would highlight the great work of Major General Johnny Davis and USAREC and all that they're doing. We're really moving the needle in the right direction and bringing in the soldiers that we need. And part of this transforming contact is bringing in the talent that we're going to need, training them in a different way, developing them in a different way, some of which is going to, well, I know, a good bit of it will fall in the domain and the Cyber Center of Excellence, the domain that you work here as well. So long and short of it, the operational environment has changed. It always has changed. It changed 25 years ago, and it changed 20 years from now. And we as an institution, working with our industry partners here, especially the junior leaders in this room, who I'm harping on, because you will own this over the next 5 to 10 years-ish or so, must pay attention to paragraph 1, situation, understand this enemy, and will allow us to develop very quickly. And I'll offer up, team, lastly on this slide, the command proper does a lot of great work on the operational environment, a lot of great work through the TRADOC G2 in this case. I'm not saying this to pound any chest whatsoever, but sharing that across the entire enterprise in the Army and the Joint Force, working with the other services as well, a lot of great work in INDOPACOM to really understand what's behind all that in the operational environment to give us the overmatch, the guidance, and the focus that we need. And I can say with some authority, the Chief relies on it as well and has hooked it to the guidance that we have received to transform quickly and transform in contact for our Army. Quickly, not as defined as I said, a 4-minute mile, but at the proper pace to integrate the operational environment. Okay. I think I'm over-caffeinated, so I'm going to slow down a little bit and go to the next slide, please. Now, team, I'd like for you to follow me here, and I do want to speak to you in the context of being in a great command and being in a great Army. But I do want to shape this to the theme of this conference today, and the theme of the expertise represented in the room, to include some of the young leaders and soldiers that may be going through some institutional PME of some type. And I do want to harp upon the relationship and reliance that we're going to have with our industry partners to help us maintain the overmatch, think differently, develop differently, and just get what we need to operate effectively in this environment. Now, some of you may have heard of transforming contact, continuous transformation, Army transformation, or hop on the word transformation. And I can say, and you would know more than I do, that the rapid pace of everything in the cyber domain, the signal domain, the network domain, a lot of which General Morrison and some of his partners, peers talked to yesterday, moves so quickly, it will demand a difference in how we train, how we develop, how we lay out requirements, how we communicate with our industry partners just to get at it. I gave my one bad cell phone joke. You know how quickly it's going to move to be a cell phone, whatever, in a couple of months from now. Very intuitive, something you can use, but the technology moves very, very quickly. So what I'd like to do, team, is please do follow me here, is flip down to the bottom half of the slide. And I want to give a little bit of context to the graphic first, and then talk to those and build up to the top. I purposely have used a layer of bricks behind this. And I want to give some context, but I'll give a story that my team unfortunately has heard about 4 or 5 times before, so bear with me. When in the previous assignment, I've had an opportunity to be stationed at both of our CONUS-based training centers. Great opportunity. I recommend it for any young captain that's out there. But what I did see on just a couple occasions, and I'll connect this to this domain, to this discipline. What I did see on a couple of occasions is soldiers sometimes not comfortable in their skin with the basic blocking and tackling responsibilities they had. Same with some officers. And so, simply decided at this point of all that TRADEC is going to do for the Army, and I say this broadly, regardless of your respective school that you're working with at your MOS, I say this broadly, that the core mission is going to be training lethal soldiers and developing competent leaders. You can expand that to whatever you do, to include the students that are in this room today. So just expand that broadly. And if nothing else happens, that's going to happen. And if you put it in the context of the development of what this domain does, or this discipline does, cyber, signal, the network, the whole bit, if you put it in the context of that, if you have that first layer of bricks, you now have what's needed to continue to build yourself educationally, institutionally, of course. You have also delivered that right type of leader to Forces Command and others so they can continue to do their training collectively and build toward that collective proficiency that our Army needs to do just that, the transform and contact the whole bit. Now, I just ask that you apply this to every respective echelon of education and training, and that's the bluff there on the layer of bricks. There's no compromise with it. Think about it that way. So you should expect someone to know how to operate the basic communication set, do PT, shoot, move, communicate the whole bit at the respective echelon. And that is a serious mission for the command, and I owe that to you. We owe that to you. Now, bring it up to the top. Given the context of the operational environment that I mentioned in the very beginning, applies to TRADOC just like it does to every other ACOM, ASAC, the entire United States Army, and the Joint Force, period. If we ignore it, we may end up writing a letter home to some parent, and nobody wants to do that. So, to support the chief and the secretary, now, pardon me if I get a little grunt language on you, but to support the chief and the secretary and support Army transformation, have charged the command, myself, working in great partnership with my battle buddies and all the other 3 ACOMs and the SEC commanders, to simply be adaptive, as it says here, responsive and efficient. I'll explain some of that in a moment, to help our Army transform. And I know that it can't be done in isolation as a command. I also know it can't be done in isolation on focusing on just the training, the leader development, the whole piece. So my one geeky comment is I do fully realize, we fully realize, and the instructors in this room, the communication with our industry partners, and the students, to simply ask, I challenge you to keep that lens of looking at things through a Dotland PF perspective, and it helps us align and transform, help transform the Army. It brings in the budget, the whole bit. So, a little bit on the top. I'm narrowing my focus now to those who work in the cyber field, signal field, the network, and others, unique, obviously, tailored to the theme of the conference here. So we need to be a bit adaptive in our problem solving. And I won't even say a bit adaptive, a lot adaptive. And part of that is working with our industry partners, for sure, how we communicate problems, how we communicate requirements, how we train down at all level, the experimentation, the whole bit. So be adaptive at approaching things. It does not help to hold on to legacy processes and systems and practices that this command has been doing for 51 years now, and so are the other commands as well. It's all about adapting. And it doesn't change the core mission that we must deliver, but is being adaptive. Now, a couple of highlights. 100% commend experimentation and training things here. 100% commend the dialogue from the command, whether it's through an acquisition channel, a network channel, through the Center of Excellence, CG, and talking to the industry, and here's a problem set we have, help us with some solutions, allow time in the acquisition process, and I won't go into the acquisition disciplines because I'm not one, but allow time for soldier touch points, allow time to fix equipment, allow time to see if this helps solve the problem, fix, train, do, adapt, rinse and repeat, whatever you have to do. So I commend those new processes. It is all about being adaptive and responsive in some respects as well. Now I also know we need to do some, we recommend, also adaptive in the response lane. Be responsive to the needs of the soldier, be responsive to the needs of the respective theater. Solution A might work in Indo-PACOM, might not work in another part of the world. And that's the reality that we just need to accept sometimes, and I know our senior leaders are as well. And that may be timed or tailored to the type of unit that's going to deploy to this region of the world, when they're going to deploy, when they're going to modernize. And all that I just said, team, is clearly hooked to the relationship with our acquisition partners and the expertise, whether it's military, civilian, or not, that helps us work the cyber world, all of the domains. And it's critical that we do that. Now, lastly, guidance to the command, which filters down to the team as well and everybody in this room. Would probably not be smart to go totally unconstrained eyeballs in this. At some point, you do have to. Here's the capabilities we need, here's the training that we need, here's something we need to help develop the overmatched proficiency that we need. But do keep in mind with resources that make that happen. I was told many, many years ago, the palm waits for no man, and that's it. But there's ways to very clearly lay out the requirement and and provide options to our senior leaders, our industry partners as well, to be efficient with ample resources, but limited resources as well, because it's a big Army and a lot to take care of. So if I can do an in-progress review, understand our operational environment, which I think we've done a pretty good job on and will continue to. And that's clearly working with the other commands, specifically the great relationship with Army Futures Command. And then within TRADOC, understanding what needs to be done at our core mission and how we adapt to the operational threat, and then working with our industry partners and be very clear-eyed on the requirements that the command needs to do to adapt the institutional part of the Army and deliver that first layer of bricks, and hooking in those first three characteristics of the charge, my charge, of being adaptive, responsive, and obviously efficient. And that is a change from business as usual, but business as usual doesn't always work based off the operational threat. But it does not change what the command, as the institutional arm of the Army, has always done. So I'll ask that you hook that first layer of bricks with the adaptive transformation mindset up in the front, and then we can transition to the next slide, because I do want to save some time for Q&A, team. Okay, we've talked the operational environment. We talked an intellectual and institutional approach for training the Army. It must be adaptive, and I'll give a couple examples as I talk through this slide. I will focus just a tad bit on the focus area given from the chief to the command, and I do believe I spoke about this last year. It's been written about by the four focus areas, so I won't get geeky as we explain more. But what I am comfortable in saying, the Army as an institution focused on the top half of our profession will continue to work policies, funding, and programs and make the Army as an entity profession work well. Very confident with that. And I continue to have rose-colored glasses and very, very optimistic. On the bottom half of the slide does connect to that first layer of bricks that I showed you on the previous one, and that's the professional. Whether it's the infantryman, the cook, the cyber warrior, it doesn't matter. Of all ranks, the professional is where the command will continue to focus on. So I want to call out just a few examples here, team, and I'll stop in a moment on one more slide and turn it over for Q&A. Just a few examples of the adapting that the command is doing, and I want to highlight a few examples that have worked so well so far to assist the Army in transforming within this domain and across all the other domains as well. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, and I'll own it, as the person who's in charge of the institutional arm. We would not be smart to not realize that we will probably have to adapt some of the ways we train, some of the ways we deliver combat-ready forces, some of the ways we write doctrine, POIs, a whole bit. That's going to happen. So there may be opportunities, there may be reasons that how the DOT and PF get juggled and integrated together may change based off the speed of technology, which you know is very fast. And it works to our advantage, and it works to our adversaries' advantage as well. The bluff, I know there has to be some changes there. So as an example, I know for sure, and you do, just as much as I do, the speed of technology is like that, especially in the communications, the cyber, the AI, the data domain. So what we're doing institutionally, and I'm focusing on, in this case, the students in the room, the future leaders in the room, and obviously any solutions that industry could provide us in the future, is giving some baseline data literacy training in all PME, brick and mortar education. And that is relatively new. Because what we've also learned in understanding our environment, change in domestic environment, we also know that the young soldier and the young leader coming in today, which are going to be in your formations, they're digital natives. They're pretty doggone comfortable, which allows us to adapt how we're going to do our training on this new type of equipment that will make us more lethal and more proficient in this environment. So that's one thing. Sending some many students, well, I shouldn't say students, many uniformed and civilian, to a variety of courses using, partnering with some of our civilian education. Carnegie Mellon, Duke University. I just sent a couple at MIT not too long ago to continue to build that data literacy grit. And then, of course, this Cyber Center of Excellence is a great example of it, given some of that deep expertise in that respective domain as well. So that's part of the education piece. We also know and have seen, because things are, the rapid development of communications equipment, radios, you name it, just as a couple examples, is a lot faster than a new tank coming off the assembly line. It requires a different level of training. So I will credit what the Cyber Center has done, the Signal Mobile Advanced Readiness Training, and that working with our industry partners, which is somewhat of an ask, because we may need this in the future as well, is to help train the institutional force, and then the institutional force deploys out and trains the operational force, and then it's tested through things like this brigade exercise in 101st, and that same brigade will soon begin a combat training center rotation down in Fort Johnson now, in about another week or so. If you go back to the example I mentioned in the beginning about how we have to improve our training path in some cases, this is a great example of it. And I just addressed, team, the partnership with our industry partners to help train the force. And we're mobile enough and adaptive enough, and there's been some great examples of that through the Combined Arms Center and all of our Center of Excellence, to go to the field and train them, build the seed corn within the brick and mortar, and on the follow-on rotations and training events, that seed corn is now within the institutional force, and that is different than what has been done before. That also allows us to rapidly change doctrine if we have to, when we have to, adapt POIs, lesson plans, the whole bit. I say that to underscore how the command in supporting Army transformation will and has and will continue to be flexible, adaptive, responsive, obviously be good stewards of our money to adapt what we need to do to deliver the Army. And my last slide, please. Deliver readiness to the Army. Now, I'm going to take off my TRADOC CG hat, and I want to put on my seasoned general hat, senior leader hat. And I do want to focus in this team, in this environment team, to the leaders represented in this room. Whether you're a student, whether you're a leader, or whether you're going to be the one that helps drive this in the next 4 to 5 years. Not doctrinal stuff, just a couple. I'm not going to read them all. I mentioned in my opening remarks, team, I do feel, for all the right reasons, if nothing else because technology moves so doggone quickly, that this domain is vital to our future. Command posts that used to pound their chest about being about half an acre, the size of a football field at the National Training Center 15 years ago, it's not going to survive. The Op 4 scouts used to find you and then kill you. It might take a little bit longer. They don't have to even find you now. It's all about the electronic signature and things like that. So this domain and the capabilities nested with all the other stuff within protection will allow us to continue to fight and win and survive. So strengthen that, and I charge myself and others to look at that as well. In my grunt terms team, when we have an opportunity, I gave a couple examples of it as well. And if you're a future commander out there, sergeant major, somebody, this is very much a grunt comment. Train, experiment, fix, and train some more. That somewhat touches to the relationship we have with our industry partners also, and helping along that developmental line of the capabilities that we have. And we'll feed this into our future, to our working with other partners, and all of it will be building off of the future Army warfighting concept, which we'll have soon. You could connect those last two. I mentioned transformation. We have to do it. Innovate, think, drive change for our United States Army, especially in this domain, because it's going to go very quickly. And I'll flip down to the last bullet and I'll stop because the clock is ticking. And this is specifically a charge for the uniform in this room that may be a little more seasoned than a young lieutenant or captain, private or specialist. Is help develop that leader. He or she is going to come to you at a level of competence that we might not have had when we came in the Army. I'm seeing that in the young soldiers and the young leaders come through today. I mentioned digital natives. So they'll be able to grasp these concepts and deliver that same Army that we're going to be proud to sit in our living room one day and watch. And if you take all that team, and I'll close here, it's kind of ball it all back up to our Army transformation, whether it's transforming contact, transform quickly, just Army transformation. And I would narrow that down specifically to what this Center of Excellence does in this domain. We must continue to be adaptive, we must be flexible, and yet tie that to the core mission, in this case TRADOC, the core mission that we have for institutional training, working very closely with my other ACOMs so that we will deliver, I know, very confident, that combat-ready Army that will kick ass as part of the joint force, and we rely on the expertise in this room to help us do that. So with that team, I'll stop. According to the clock, I got about 7 minutes. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you more for what you do for our combat readiness every day. Appreciate it. Cool. So I was either dynamic, or I can take a couple of questions. Happy to.
Thank you, sir. We do have a couple of questions from the audience this morning.
Okay. Okay.
First question, the Army continues...
I hear you, but I don't see you. I'm sorry.
The Army continues to move capability development to software pathways, delivering systems at a considerably quicker pace. How is TRADOC looking at training from the lens of institutional and net to keep up with the speed of software change?
Okay, I have to apologize. Could you read that one more time, please?
The Army continues to move capability development to software pathways, delivering systems at a considerably quicker pace. How is TRADOC looking at training from the lens of institutional and net to keep up with the speed of software change?
Well, yes, well, one, and I touched on it a tad bit, and I hopefully I'll answer your question. I do know that it's going to take some training, some changes on how we do simple brick and mortar education. That much I can see. But we're going to get to that point after we build the institutional bench in our instructors, whether it's non-commissioned officers, warrant officers, or a mix of civilians, all of which I think is going to happen. I do sense it's going to, well, we're proving it now, an increased relationship on working with our partners, whether it's through the project officers within the military, working with the Army staff as well, to build the expertise to, one, train and educate within the uniform and add some grit and some meat to how we do the institutional piece. Part of this is the pipeline. As I gave an example earlier, probably a bad one, of the TINK. So I know that's going to take a couple of years to develop. But that same software needs to be weaved back into the institution to allow us to train it for future tranches. Another great example is the partnership now with the brigade that's in the field training on this kit. And we've been partnered with them for about 60 to 90 days now. We'll follow it all the way through the ongoing, soon-to-be ongoing JROTC rotation, and then pull that back into what I'll call the gonculator, or the Dotland PF piece. If that helps a bit, and we're also doing the foundry level type training, and I gave an example of the SMART Mobile Advanced Readiness training capability, which I can tell you is not something that we've done before, with less reliance on the FSRs, an early partnership with industry to build that grit and expertise we'll need to advance this ball. That help a little bit? Guess that's a no.
Sir, I just received the email, questions by email, so I'm not the person
Okay.
who.
All right.
who
So we're
asked.
both transition, both flexible here. Okay.
Thank you, sir. The next
thank you.
question, to build on your comment about data literacy, would TRADOC consider advocating for the development of a data warrant officer MOS to allow for the professional growth and retention of data experts across the Army?
We would definitely entertain that capability. Now, let me define entertain. This is ongoing. Would not be wise to say that it does not require some differences in the expertise that needs to be in the uniform ranks. So whether that's a mix of military and civilian expertise, we're literally looking at it. Matter of fact, I'll get an update tomorrow on the approach there. But I'm going to get a little organizational on you. I do sense, and we need to do the proper analysis on the capabilities that we need within the respective echelons of our transforming Army. So what is the core of the, without defining what the future Army Corps is going to look like, or what the future Army Division will look like, or the brigade combat teams, and it's still being sorted out in conjunction with our struct decisions, is what capabilities do we need to manage the network, command and control at the division, corps, and link it into the ASCCs. And I'll leave it that broad. Break the mission analysis that is ongoing to include a type of training that somebody might have to have. Is it an ASI, a career management field, or a brand new branch for a warrant officer or an officer, to be determined. And with that comes some complexity. We've seen in the last 10 to 15, 20 years that we've had to develop some new skill sets, ASIs, or training to give that level of capability. So I kind of sense yes, but I'm not going to get ahead of the analysis that's ongoing. And I personally, the command, has the mission to bring this back to the chief, working with the team, with our headquarters DA team as well, to make sure that we get it right. Over.
That was our final question for General Brito. Please welcome General Lawrence back to the stage.
All right.
We lost the general. Well, thank you, General Brito, for joining us here today. In lieu of a speaker's gift, we will be making a donation to the Signal and Cyber Corps Historical Museum on his behalf. So, most of you know me. I have a script I have to follow and read. I would like to say so much more, but I can't. Both, as you know, yesterday was very uncomfortable as you came in here. Both FC International and the Augusta Marriott at the Convention Center are aware of the odor in the vicinity of the Oglethorpe Ballroom and are working diligently to remedy the situation. In cooperation with the local authorities, the affected areas have undergone tests for the presence of hazardous material, and those authorities have stated that it is safe to proceed with this conference. Good thing, right? We will continue to cooperate with the local authorities on this ongoing investigation. I'm going to add a word, Paul, I'm sorry. This ongoing criminal investigation. All authorities investigating this incident are, at this time, and based on the evidence gathered to date, allege that it was a willful act. And so we will continue to pursue. But what I want to say to you all is thank you so much for your professionalism yesterday. There was no doubt the intent was to disrupt this symposium, and you didn't let it happen. You drove on. So thank you very much for your partnership. Our next session in this room is a joint keynote presentation by Major General Patrick Ellis and Mr. Mark Kitts, and it will begin at 10:15. We'll see you back here shortly. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next session in space will begin shortly. Please help us transition quickly to the next session.